Hello there. I promised you some playing notes and a PDF to accompany my bass transcription of Go Wild in the Country. So here they are. Before we dive into the detail, I just have some thoughts about my overall approach. A few months ago, I started transcribing some of Leigh Gorman's bass lines with Bow Wow Wow. I've done quite a few now, and I suppose I suddenly realised halfway through the process with horror that I'd actually need to play them. Transcribing was one thing, but playing them was a totally different other thing entirely, mainly because I realised that 90% of Leigh's bass lines are played with a pick, and I've always played fingerstyle. And that came as a bit of a shock and was a real baptism of fire. So I'd say this video is really for fingerstyle players, essentially, who want some kind of way in to play Leigh Gorman's lines. Or it's for seasoned pick players to have a good laugh. Because I think when I was a young bass player and I was very taken with jazz and Jaco Pastorius and all that kind of great stuff, but I think I might have been a little bit snooty about pick players. So I think it's probably just dessert or humble pie or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, it is what it is. So the focus really is on getting some kind of consistency in the right hand. Don't forget, detune the bass a half step. So we're E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. Again, I think 99% of the tracks that Leigh cut with Bow Wow Wow are in that drop E flat tuning. Leigh's sound is first and foremost in his fingers and in his pick, but of course he plays a wall bass, and they're renowned for having a particular sound, a lot to do with obviously the way that the bass is made, but also to do with the specific frequency sweep filters that it has built into it, so the electronics. But they cost, I don't know, £15,000 now, I think. So you'll have noticed I'm not playing a wall bass. So I'm having to use a sort of jazz type bass here, which has been my main bass for 35 years, I think now. You might also notice that I've got an extra fret here. You will need that third octave. He very frequently jumps to that note at the very top there. So I had to sort of lash together a pseudo fret, as it were, to be able to access that. The second challenge is of more conceptual nature, really. Leigh's bass technique is obviously consummate, but he's also a really strong communicator or storyteller. Although this particular track isn't my favourite Bow Wow Wow track, I'd say it showcases Leigh's ability to both be able to support the rhythm section, to be part of the rhythm section, and then also he has these wonderful moments where he's able to dart out from the background, so to speak, from the shadows, in a sort of flash of bravura. He knows instinctively when to break the sort of famous bass playing rules of don't tread on anyone else's toes, don't play too many notes, don't get in the way of the vocal. So that ability reminds me also of James Jameson's playing, the famous Motown studio bass player, and in particular his work with Marvin Gaye on the What's Going On track. It's really a duet between the bass and Marvin Gaye's vocals, in the same way that I think Leigh has that ability here to know when to support the vocal and also duet with it, to provide a counterpoint, to give the vocal the flexibility to be wayward when it needs to be wayward, because his time is so solid, so good. It gives Annabella's vocal the ability to rush into drag against that, to that anchor that he provides. So our challenge therefore is to coordinate left and right hand. If we're coming from fingerstyle, the challenge mostly is going to be with the right hand. And also to have an understanding of what Leigh's trying to do with the track conceptually, and to work with the changes in mood, the very distinct changes of mood that he creates with this piece, the changes in dynamics, articulation and energy. There's always plenty of energy in Leigh's work. Yet another of Leigh's skills is the ability to communicate the fact that he seems to be having fun. Anyway, enough waffle, let's have a more detailed look at the various sections. So we're looking at letter A. It's a very legato flowing line. I think this is the perfect opener for the story, the country story as it were. And I think there's more than a nod here to J.S. Bach's cello suites, the broken chord approach as it were, played in a very legato style here, propels the story forward in a very gentle, as a very sort of gentle scene opener, I feel here. So the challenge here is to really get those 16th notes, but to make them sound legato, to phrase them in a legato fashion. How do we pick it with the right hand? I'm playing those two notes in the same stroke, and then I'm pulling off that note and then coming back the other way with a stroke. So pull off, back. So up, up, pull off, down. Then the same. The challenge I find there is getting evenness between the notes and avoiding a slight swing to it. I hear just a little bit of a da 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 da, which it isn't. They're absolutely straight semiquavers. So the other alternative is to play them alternate strokes. If you look at, I think, one of the clearest videos on YouTube of Leigh performing this particular song, it'll probably be the BBC Top of the Pops. I think there's two versions, Top of the Pops 1982. Good camera work when it's on Leigh, and you can pretty well clearly see with his right hand that he's playing it alternate picking. So in other words, every stroke up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. I should of course mention the wonderful section that leads us right to the very top of the neck. So I'm fingering it on the left hand like that, and with my right hand picking, I'm raking all the way back or sweeping all the way back. I think again on that BBC Two video you can see Leigh very clearly doing that sweeping back movement. And then the second part of the phrase, I think as well that phrase is a great melodic foreshadowing of the stratospheric nature that the chorus will eventually bring. Just a note on the actual pick itself, I don't think there's any special pick, and obviously everyone's going to feel comfortable with different grades of pick or makes of pick. Starting with an Altex pick, which is very rigid, but has a nice sort of soft sound. I was liking that, and then for some reason I ditched that and started using a much more flexible, I think this is a Jim Dunlop, but I also started using it on its side. Doesn't give you quite as clean attack, I think, to the sound. I suppose if you're a rookie pick player like me, it gives you the ability to skip the strings a little more cleanly. So that's the first section, section A, and I think in many respects it's the most challenging. The line at B is a much more conventional, sort of funky line, but it shouldn't be underestimated. It's a killer groove in and of itself, and it almost reminds me of some of Jaco Pastorius's endless sort of grooves, things like Kuru, Speak Like a Child. I should note that on the transcription sometimes Leigh plays it like this. So as that blue note. He also, I think, pulls off the note here with the left hand most times. At letter C, we're suddenly plunged into what feels like a sort of Andalusian moonlit garden. It suddenly gets a very sort of flamenco feel, which is quite natural really, because Leigh started as a classical guitarist, classical stroke flamenco. I believe he had lessons and played in the school orchestra on that particular instrument. So you can hear that, well, certainly you can hear the rigour of that technique in his playing, but you can also get a flavour of that in this particular section. At letter F we get a ascending and descending, strongly scalic cycle. Used cleverly as a device to lead us into the stratosphere of the actual chorus. So in this joyous chorus, Leigh's melodic material is drawn really almost entirely from Annabella's vocal line. There are also notes derived from the major pentatonic scale, a scale which is long used by composers, especially classical composers and folk composers as well, to conjure up a rural idyll. So it's quite appropriate for this particular song. In a way, this is the bit where you can kick back. It's the easiest part to play, really. And certainly a lot of fun to play. It's a reward for getting this far in the piece. And you get that repetitive sort of Morse code, that sort of machine gun rhythmic figure there, which really propels that famous chorus line into the stratosphere. The other section we should talk about is at letter J in the PDF, where we get this double stop line. I'm in two minds about this line. I've listened very, very closely to the transcription using various different techniques, including extracting the stems, using sort of more modern stuff like AI to be able to hear clearly the bass. And there seem to be two voices, I should say, to the bass line. If you just give a cursory listen to it, it appears to just be this. But I don't think that's the full story. Again, looking at that BBC Two video clip, Top of the Pops clip, it's hard to see exactly what he's playing there. But if you listen, there is another voice, which includes the open A, like this. I think it's that, which again wouldn't be too uncommon given what we've already said about Leigh and his early experiences with classical guitar. Double stops, quite common, and obviously chords. The very last phrase is slightly different. It's what is obvious if you watch that Top of the Pops video is that you see he does a constant downstroke here with the right hand. Which seems to indicate that he's doing those other movements with a hammer on the left hand. So, Leigh Gorman, a player who I feel is somewhat under the radar and probably slightly underappreciated out there in YouTube land. Fortunately, Leigh is still very much alive and playing and living in LA. So it's not too late to spread some Leigh-Love around. I urge you to explore more of the Bow Wow Wow canon and to dig deep, as there are plenty more gems. So good luck, especially to my fellow pick converts out there, and thank you for watching, and bye-bye for now.
I don't want you to. I don't wanna like you. I'll shut my head. I don't want you.